One of them is this wonderfully named wild, hairy man from Botany Bay. What is it?
It's pretty crazy, and I only discovered it fairly recently. It was illustrated in a book, which I was looking into, and there he was at the very back of this book, which is called Portraits of the Famous and Infamous, by the collector Rex Nancovell. He self-produced it many years ago. And I found this creature, and this mad, hairy, wild man, manacled, holding a bone in one hand and a club in the other, with this little inscription on his den, saying, "The den of the hairy wild man from Botany Bay." And I thought, why have I never seen this before? I've looked for things about bunyips and monsters and transportation images, Botany Bay images, and it had never come up. And the reason was because you had to actually search on the name of the book itself, or the pamphlet really. It's not a book, it's only 14 pages. It's called A Tour Through the Apollo Gardens in Gawsworth near Macclesfield, Cheshire, which would be if you searched on that you'd find it, but it's now been digitised, made more apparent to people. And it's a great story. I mean, he's this crazy guy that I think probably represents in a kind of interesting way the plight of the convicts sent out to the colonies as he's manacled there. But the text that goes with it is crazy. It's like somebody on drugs writing this sort of stream of consciousness story about verses in the night sky, musical fountains, meeting a Masonic hermit, and eventually towards the end of this crazy sort of narrative, he sees the den, and out charges the hairy wild man, and luckily the chain stops him from mauling him, and then he stands there. He stands there and describes this crazy hairy beast. And it's a wonderful thing. It's only produced 14 years after settlement in 1802. And as I say, I think it's connected to the idea of transportation to convicts, but it goes back into human consciousness, way back to the ancient Mesopotamian story of Gilgamesh, in which the first hairy man called Enkidu was actually sort of depicted or described. And it's been a constant in our history since, through the medieval period, through the Renaissance. Hairy wild men have been depicted by Dürer and Schongauer and these various Renaissance German artists. So it's kind of something in our consciousness, and I think it was reflecting people's kind of concerns about what was happening on the other side of the world from England at this struggling colony.
I have to say, he looks a lot like one of the characters in Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, this kind of, clumsy character.